The reason why it takes so long to produce these videos for you is that I like to do everything almost in real time. I like to go along with the process and show you exactly how it turned out from the beginning to the end. And I know that's what a lot of people really love about my YouTube channel, is that I'm not just performing the act and then letting you go on your own. I'm showing you exactly how this bag of grains turned out from the beginning all the way right here until the end. A grain to grain transfer is exactly what it sounds like. You're going to take some colonized grains from one bag, put them into an uncolonized bag of grains, and that's it. That's a grain to grain transfer, or it's often abbreviated online as a G2G transfer. There are many ways to inoculate some uncolonized grains, and a grain-to-grain transfer is one of many ways. A quick disclaimer is that before you actually watch this whole grain-to-grain transfer video, go to my channel and actually watch the Colonized Agar to Uncle Ben's video, just to get an idea of what's going on. This is exactly the same, but we're just replacing the colonized agar with colonized grains to uncolonized grains with the same supplies. Might be a little different, so I'll link that agar video down below, and I'll also link that agar video up here in the information cards. A lot of people watching this video could be people that are new subscribers or people that haven't even subscribed yet, and you might be watching this video like, what the heck is this and what the heck is that? I've got tons of questions, and I've received a lot of comments on my videos asking a lot of questions, and it turns out they come from new viewers who don't even know what 90-second mycology is. So if you're a new viewer who doesn't know what's going on, definitely take a look at this channel's uploaded videos, and I can guarantee almost all of your questions will be answered. The benefit of a grain-to-grain transfer is that you're inoculating the uncolonized grains with already established and viable mycelium, just like with colonized agar. So it's going to speed up your colonization rate, as well as help eliminate any contamination that could be inside of a spore syringe or liquid culture. When you take a spore syringe directly to uncolonized grains, that's actually the worst inoculation method. There are so many things that can go wrong with that you can end up just ruining your whole operation, wasting your grains and wasting all the time and effort you put into it. Besides the factor of the syringe being contaminated and then contaminating your whole bag of uncolonized grains, you just have that long waiting period of the spores that need to germinate and meet and then grow together to form the mycelium. At least with a liquid culture syringe, you're injecting already viable and established mycelium into the grains. But even then, if you haven't tested that liquid culture on agar, that liquid culture syringe could be contaminated, and that could also ruin your whole operation. This channel will get into more agar work, so if you're still intimidated by agar, don't be. Agar is one of the best things in the world if you really want to move on and be successful with growing your own gourmet and medicinal mushrooms at home. A grain-to-grain transfer sounds like the best thing in the world. You might think to yourself, then why would I ever even go back to a spore syringe when I can just keep transferring grains to more grains to more grains to more grains? The reality of it is that eventually senescence does set in with mushroom genetics, which means they'll either just stop growing or they'll just start to deteriorate. Genetics will just slow down and eventually stop. When you start brand new genetics from spores, you're safe to do a grain to grain for many different generations. So don't let that scare you. You can colonize one bag of Uncle Ben's brown ready rice that's perfect every time in 90 seconds and turn that into 10 or 20 or 30 more bags of rice before those genetics are even going to stall out and not be able to fruit anymore. The first mandatory supply you should always have on hand with mushroom cultivation is 70% isopropyl alcohol. A lot of people think that the 99% alcohol is the best. Go watch my 30-minute syringe inoculation video and find out why you need 70% isopropyl alcohol. But I also have these atomizer bottles. If you haven't seen my creating your own alcohol sanitizer video on this channel, then you should check that out as well. An optional supply is the disinfectant spray. I always mention that we've got the 70% isopropyl alcohol, but this is a great thing to spray around your whole work area just to be safe. This does not mean that things are sterile. This means that things are sanitary. I've got some gloves. These can be rubber or latex or nitrile. If you don't have gloves, you want to pick yourself up a nice pair of fresh tweezers that you can use just for mycology, which can handle some flame sterilization or some isopropyl alcohol sanitization. You'll need a nice pair of scissors, micropore paper tape. I explain this tape in great detail in my Colonized Agar to Uncle Ben's inoculation video. A brand name NextCare 3M gentle paper tape is going to have the word micropore written inside of the roll of tape. Since there's nothing written here, it's sold as gentle paper tape, but it's still micropore paper tape. If you've come back here from the Colonized Agar to Uncle Ben's video, then you'll know that I use an unmodified tote as my still air box. And without spoiling too much, if you still haven't gone back and watched the Agar to Uncle Ben's video, there's no holes cut in this box. So I'll cover that as well in a little bit. I'm going to spray this down with disinfectant spray, flip it over, let it hang off the edge of my counter just so I can reach my arms and hands underneath to work inside of it. I'm below the still air box, so I can reach inside of it. Even if I had T-Rex arms, I would have this amount of space to use as a still air box. For my personal grain-to-grain transfer, I'm only going to use my colonized grain, my uncolonized grain, my micropore paper tape, and my pair of scissors, and my spray bottle of isopropyl alcohol. Outside of the still air box, I've got my paper towels. As always, with everything that we do, there are multiple ways to do it. Multiple techniques and multiple opinions. If you did not have gloves, then we'd use those tweezers and flame sterilize those tweezers to grab a chunk of the colonized mycelium and drop it inside of this bag. But using gloves that have been sanitized is just fine because a colonized mycelium cake is pretty resistant to contamination. We're worried about the uncolonized grains becoming contaminated. Since I'm only going to be doing one bag, you have a choice. You can break up this mycelium cake in this bag and then pull the chunks out of it, or you can just cut the top off and pull out what you need and inoculate one bag and then spawn the rest of this to a bulk substrate. But if you wanted to turn this into 10 or 20 more bags of colonized grain, I would mix it all up in here and I would slice the whole top off and I'd go through each bag of uncolonized grains and just dump a little bit in, seal it up, and move on to the next one until you've turned this bag from one bag of colonized grains into 10 or 20 bags of colonized grains. But I personally do not need that many colonized grains, so I'm only going to take exactly what I need from these colonized grains, inoculate one more bag, and that's going to be my grain to grain transfer. Then I can spawn the rest of this however I see fit. I'm going to cut this bag as close to the mycelium as I can here. I know that's real hard to see through this still air box, but everything in there is nice and white, fuzzy, colonized, ready to just be spawned or transferred to more uncolonized grain. You could see here in the corner that it kind of stuck to the bag, so might just be pulling this chunk out of here right here and then saving the rest for later. If you want to do this, you could just put this into a plastic Ziploc bag as it is and then put it in your fridge to save it for later when you're ready to use the rest of these colonized grains. You've got that fresh, sweet mycelium smell. Now I'm going to slice a corner off of this bag just like the Colonized Agar to Uncle Ben's video so that I can take some of this colonized grain, drop it in there, and then seal it up. Since I'm not using tweezers, I want to make a hole that's big enough to fit my fingers inside of to drop those grains. So not only will this work as our little grain to grain drop slot, but it's going to work for our gas exchange hole as well. This is why you need a still air box, because when you've got uncolonized grains just sitting open like that, anything could go wrong. So I'll be grabbing about this much. Plenty of fresh, viable, and established mycelium in this little pinch. Drop it in there just like that. Stay sanitary, because now we're really putting our fingers in an open wound here. This is very dangerous. So I always say, pretend you're doing surgery on yourself. How clean do you want that to be? I'm not going to shake this up or anything. Just like my agar inoculation video, I'm going to leave it just as it is. Let it sit there and colonize the grains on its own. You'll be able to feel the rice hardening up, and then you'll be able to break it up and shake it and mix it later on. They sell paper tape that's got a wider width, which would be great for these huge open wounds to tape up. But just be quick about it. You really want to make sure that you seal it around that hole so that there's no dirty, contaminated air that's going to get into it from outside of the still air box. If your bags are still kind of wet from any alcohol or disinfectant spray, the tape is going to have a hard time sticking to it. So if you have to use a lot more tape, that's okay. Do what you need to do to save your grains. And now the grain to grain transfer is complete, so I'll close this one off and throw it into a plastic Ziploc bag and put it in my refrigerator. We have officially performed a grain to grain inoculation with Uncle Ben's microwavable brown rice that's perfect every time in 90 seconds. The concluding tips for this video are almost the same as the agar to Uncle Ben's video. You want to keep your freshly inoculated bag up high, away from any pets or people, and you do not want to mess with the bag for at least 1 to 2 weeks. The more you play with this and pick it up and look at it and sniff it and smell it and spit on it and look at it and touch it and squeeze it, you're just asking for contamination. Just let it sit and let it be. Let the mycelium colonize what it can to become resistant to any contamination, and as time goes on, you'll be able to see some of the mycelium reach the bottom of the bag. And keep the temperatures between 75 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. For this bag that's still fully colonized, because I only took not even that much mycelium out of it to colonize this one, I sealed it up in a plastic bag and I'm just going to put it in my refrigerator. Try not to let it freeze. Just keep it somewhere cool until you're ready to spawn it, or inoculate 10 or 20 more bags with it, whatever you want to do. This is going to be your easiest inoculation method if you still do not want to move on to agar. I like to stress the importance of your labels. If you're really trying to learn from this experience, always put the date on it and always put your inoculation method on it, or any other label you want to use to identify what this is. So G2G stands for grain to grain, and I inoculated on October 23rd. So if I ever go to spawn this to a bulk substrate, I'll mark the tub the same way so I can study and examine and research how everything's turning out from this grain to grain transfer on October 23rd. Here we are 12 days later. The only observation I can really make is that this is all nice, hard, colonized mycelium rice. So it's working its way down. I've tried to look at the view window. It has not really made its way down to the view window yet, and especially on camera you're really not going to see anything. But this also feels nice and colonized in this area, even if it hasn't really made its way to the view window. But perfect time for a break and a shake or a squish and a mix, because it is this much that's fully colonized. So it's ready to be broken up and mixed throughout the uncolonized grains, and I'm going to do that right here. So if you haven't seen my original break and shake or squish and mix video, go ahead and check that out on this channel. I didn't really go too in depth with breaking and shaking everything because it's kind of self-explanatory, but when you don't properly mix your colonized grains into the uncolonized grains, you can end up with only having half the bag stay colonized while the other half isn't. Even if you think you mixed it up good enough, chances are you probably did not. So here I've got my partially colonized grains from the grain to grain transfer. I've got a chip clip and my isopropyl alcohol. I'm just going to spray everything down with some isopropyl. Now I'm going to chip clip off this gas exchange hole so that the rice cannot reach it, just like that. So now I'll break up what's here. And now this is where you need to get creative on how you can bring those colonized grains down to the uncolonized grains and mix them all together. Usually it can help if you get all the rice down to the bottom of a side, so you've got all this open here to try to use as a little pathway to get those colonized grains down to the uncolonized grains. Alright, so with a lot of finessing and finagling, I managed to get some mycelium down here to the view window. So now I know that I'll be able to use that and finish up, and know that I was able to get some colonized grains down here to the view window that'll be able to clean this up nicely to get that all colonized, as well as right through here. If you mix it up and you don't see any mycelium at the view window yet, then you didn't mix it that well. So you really got to mess with it, play around with it, move these grains around, try to shift it around. It can be hard if you've got your gas exchange somewhere down here in the middle. When you keep the gas exchange up high like this, you can chip clip it off so the rice doesn't touch that tape, and really use every little bit of space that you can to move these colonized grains around to get in here with the uncolonized grains. With the way I was finagling this mycelium down here to the view window, if I saw anything that was bright green, fuzzy black dust, or pink, and I'm not growing pink oyster mushrooms, then I would know that I got contaminated up here at the top of the bag, and I didn't see it until I just did this squish and mix or break and shake and moved some of that colonized rice down here to the bottom. This is clean, healthy mycelium, and different species of mushrooms are going to bruise a different color from all the squeezing and squishing you've done, but as long as you don't see those other colors I listed, you're going to be okay. So I'm going to get that rice packed back down into a cake just like this at the bottom of the bag. Gonna remove the chip clip. Now I just need to make sure that that gas exchange hole opens back up underneath the tape. I could actually go through and retape this, because look at this. This came apart right here. That's not good. If you live in a more dirty environment, you've got some dirty air floating around, that's a source of contamination right there. But for me, I know I'll be okay by just kind of letting it be. So on the 12-day mark, I was able to do a little break and shake and squish and mix, and then probably one more week this will be fully colonized. So with a grain to grain transfer like this, you're looking at a timeline of having a fully colonized bag within 2 to 3 weeks, because you don't have to wait for those spores to germinate and then grow and then meet another compatible spore to continue growing into mycelium, because we've already put established and viable and live mycelium into this bag of uncolonized grains. I am now just a few hours away from day number 21 of colonization with this grain-to-grain transfer. That means I'm just barely approaching 3 weeks of colonization. You can see in the background here that I've got my little Spawn incubation box, which is the most recent upload right before this grain-to-grain transfer video. And if you've watched this incubation box video, as a quick little update, I'll have you know that it's been working just fine. This is the original bag of grains with the same procedure, the same break and shake or squish and mix, and the same incubation, and within 3 weeks this is what I received. A closer look here underneath the light, we can see that I've reached full, well, you know what, close to almost full colonization besides this little corner right here. But other than that, within 3 weeks, I've pretty much got a fully colonized bag from a grain to grain transfer. Everything here is as expected. It's rock hard, colonized mycelium. I'm just missing this little corner right here, and that's okay. We can see that the strongest spot was over here in the right hand corner, where I got the mycelium down from the top, down here into the uncolonized grains, and now it's been able to colonize the rest of these grains as it moves across these uncolonized grains. Of course, genetics play a big role in how long it takes for your grains to colonize with mycelium. It can be anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks when you've put already established and viable mycelium into some uncolonized grains like this. It could take up to a whole nother month, just like a spore syringe inoculation. On top of the genetics, the other factor is your environment. You saw that I pulled this out of my incubation box, and that's because that my temperatures were dropping below the ideal temperatures for colonization at night. So I put together that little Spawn incubation box, and it worked just fine to get everything back on track to get me a pretty much fully colonized bag within 3 weeks of time. If I had inoculated this bag with a spore syringe, my genetics would have been completely random. I could have had this bag fully colonized in a month or 2 months, and within 2 months' time this brown rice would have been broken down and turned to mush by the mycelium. So once you get a spore syringe to actually create some decent genetics for you, and you've got a fast colonizing bag, use that bag to do a grain-to-grain transfer to a few more bags, and you've got pretty decent genetics just like this that you can carry on to a few more bags of spawn, which in turn will carry on to a few more tubs of bulk substrate with some decent genetics and fruiting of mushrooms. Just a closer look at the mycelium here. You can see in the right hand corner where we brought the mycelium down from the top. Then it was able to fully colonize the bottom of the uncolonized grains all the way over to the left hand side here. And there's just a little bit that's uncolonized, and that's really just because of my temperature fluctuations, or else within 3 weeks this bag is pretty much fully colonized. Remember, when you have stuff colonizing on the top of your grains like this, and it's within a bag of grains, just like this 90-second bag of whole grain brown rice, that's perfect every time in the 90 seconds, you're going to feel the rice hardening up before you ever see anything down here at the view window. You can tell the difference between the colonized grains and the uncolonized grains because it literally feels just like a hard brick. I'll just reiterate again that if this bag is ready before you're actually ready to spawn this to a bulk substrate, you can go ahead and just put this in your refrigerator just as it is, just like that. Make sure it doesn't freeze, just keep it in a cool, dark spot like your refrigerator until you're ready to use it. And then if you're ready to use this right now, this second, you can actually discard these uncolonized grains in the left-hand corner, or just let it go for another week. It'll be fine if it goes for 1 more week. Either way, this bag is ready to be stored in my refrigerator, or it's even ready to spawn to a bulk substrate as it is within 3 weeks of time. And that is the full process and timeline of a grain-to-grain transfer explained just for you.